What I wish I knew about Down syndrome 8 years ago when I got the diagnosis. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a mom of 4, and my oldest, who is 7, has Down syndrome. We had a prenatal diagnosis with him. You can watch that video up here. And our lives haven't been the same since. And I want to share with you a lot of the resources that I wish I knew about and wish I had when I was first getting that diagnosis 8 years ago. Number 1, stuff takes a really long time to get. This can be like, for him, we have a gait trainer when he was little, he has a safety bed, he has a Riften chair, all of these like medical accommodations, a communication device, getting the little orthotics for their feet, he has SMOs. They take a long time to get, and it takes insurance a long time to process, and you could be looking at like 8 to 9 months for many of these things. So I recommend starting early. Even if you don't think your child will need those items, be thinking about it and kind of have a plan in place and start talking with your team early on, so that you can start those processes when you are ready. But note that like it may be too late when you start the process. Like when we started, the application for a gait trainer, he already needed it. And so it was very frustrating having to wait like 8 to 9 months for a gait trainer when he already needed it. Or even the communication device. That took so long, and it was just so frustrating feeling like we had to go through 12 weeks of him testing out different communication devices before they would pick one. And then after they picked one, this is all for insurance, they had to submit it. And then we had to wait for insurance to approve it, and then for all the processing and for it to get ordered and set up and all those things. And the timeline, I think, from start to finish, because we had to get him in with speech therapy to get him evaluated for communication device, I think it took over a year. The whole end-to-end process took over a year. For a safety bed, that took 7-8 months. So yeah, things take a long time to get, especially in the realm of accommodations in regard to like medical equipment and that sort of thing. Okay, next. Every state is different when it comes to waivers and Medicaid, and this is something you will want to look into as soon as possible, because there are certain times that you may want to apply for these programs, like when your child is hospitalized. That is typically the best time to apply for any kind of Medicaid waiver programs, because your child is technically in an institution. So that said, every state is different, and the best state from everything I've heard is Colorado, but all the states are different. And so you're going to want to learn about what your state has to offer, or if there are states that you're looking at moving to, and doing that sooner rather than later, because many states have years-long wait lists for these developmental disability waivers. So that is just something to know. This can really impact the financial situation of any household, because some waivers allow for the child with a disability to be the income requirements, and some states require that the family meet certain income requirements. Some states need the child to have medical complexities, and some states do not. And so every state is a little bit different, and what they offer is also very different. There are states that have attendant care services. So if your child qualifies for one of these waivers, they also qualify to have support in the realm of having someone else come help you with your child, or where the parent can be an attendant for their child and get paid for it by the state. And there are others that offer respite care. There are other accommodations like where they will pay to have certain items or transportation. So there's a lot there, and I can't speak on like every state because I don't know all the details, and they're changing so much right now. And with the risk of Medicaid going away, there's just a lot there that you need to do your research on this. And because of the timing of the hospitalization, this is something to look into sooner rather than later, especially if you are in the prenatal space. Because once your child is born, if they're in the NICU, they can get qualified much faster than if they are not. Some services are easier to get than others. I'm looking at you, PT. So the insurance realm is very, very interesting and challenging. And a lot of times you need a diagnosis, maybe a specific diagnosis, to qualify for certain services. So if your child needs something like ABA, they may need an autism diagnosis to get ABA from certain places. Also, PT is easier to get than something like speech. Speech covers such a big, broad umbrella of services. It can cover feeding, it can cover like pronunciation, like your articulation, it covers the total communication piece, it covers AAC, so like if you use a communication device to speak. And that's tricky because if your child needs both feeding support and communication support, and they need, communication talking wise and communication with a device, that's like 3 different types of speech therapy. However, insurance is not going to approve speech therapy for all those things because they just see speech therapy as one bucket. So you may have to play the game and work with like an OT to do feeding for you, so that you're not going around, like you're not trying to overload the speech hours that your child qualifies for. I know it's very, very silly and frustrating to say the least, because it shouldn't be this way. Your child should just be able to get what they need. And that is just not how the system works in my own personal experience and from what I've seen from others. A lot of families end up paying out of pocket for extra services that they're not able to get approved for by insurance. And so that is just something to know, because those things can add up. I'm talking this could be like $180 a week kind of adding up. So just something to know. Okay, something that I wish someone had like opened my eyes to way earlier on in the journey is that we are still trailblazing. And if your life doesn't feel normal, it's because it's not. And what I mean by that is it's really, really hard. And it's really, really hard because the systems and the supports still aren't up to where we would hope they would be in the future, because we are very much still trailblazing all of this. Institutionalization, let's be frank, is not something that really went away and is not even been like a full generation. And so knowing that, and knowing that families are just now figuring things out, and inventors and entrepreneurs are just now building a lot of the supports that we need. And these systems are still adapting to the fact that these individuals are at home, their lifespans are longer, and they are full humans. Like they're now finally seen as humans. Well, I mean, that's tricky because of everything that's going on right now in this country. But with that being said, the future is bright, but today it's still hard. And so if it feels hard, you are not alone. You are not doing anything wrong. It is hard. And remember, like, you are trailblazing. You can't look at your grandparents and be like, how did you do this? You can't look at your parents and ask how they did this, because most of them haven't. And if they had a sibling with a disability, they were typically institutionalized. And so that is something that, 8 years in, like I wish were presented to me up front, and it would have changed my perspective on a lot of things earlier on about why it just feels like sometimes like I'm drowning. And it's because we still don't have a lot of the supports set up. And it's not like the supports are starting to get there, but they're just not in a place yet. And community supports just aren't in a place yet where families with children with disabilities are really set up to thrive. And I'm not saying this isn't going to change in the future, but that's why it feels so hard right now. And I'll give you some examples. Childcare. If you have multiple children and one of them has a significant disability, where are you going to get like a babysitter? It's hard, right? That's hard. School support. Yes, your child might have an IEP. But who is responsible for teaching you how to do all of that? No one. That's on you. If your child needs a waiver, who's going to teach you how to get the waiver? No one. That's on you. What about like the medical stuff? Who is going to teach you how to navigate the medical system? That's on you. And I don't mean that like in a harsh way. And like, hopefully this channel can be a resource to provide some of that information to help other families. But that's just the reality of our situation, that as the parent, you kind of are on your own in a lot of this. And that's why my next point is so important. You need to find your tribe. You need to find your tribe. Okay, so if you have a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome right now in this very moment, my highest recommendation is to go check out DSDN. That's the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network. They are an online community support for families that are experiencing a Down syndrome diagnosis, and they have community groups for people in your season. And then my next piece of advice is to find your local chapter of the Down Syndrome Association. And this place, it's different in every location, so you may not have one. So if you don't have one, I recommend the DSDN. But if you have a Down syndrome diagnosis, I also recommend checking out your local chapter and finding other parents that are in the same season you're in. These are the people that if you are pregnant, they are also pregnant. If you just had a baby, they also just had a baby. And these are the people that you're going to walk through this journey with. And they're going to be the people you text in the middle of the night. They're the people you're going to call. Like, they're going to be the first ones to know that your kid is in the hospital. These are your people. And I say this is important because it is so important, because most other people in your life are not going to understand what you're going through. And they may not be able to help you in the ways that this community will. I don't say that in a way of like your community today is not important. Your community today is absolutely important. But you also need people in your life that can answer some of the questions that you might have about what you're going through, can help you better understand like if you should ask for a second opinion, and can start talking some of the lingo and can be like, hey, this is what the IEP says. Does that sound right? And if you have people in your community that also have children with disabilities, or that are medical professionals, that are therapists, that are teachers, that those people are really important as well. And we rely on them so much. But there's nothing like being able to text someone who also understands the exact season you're in, even though your kids are going to be totally different and have very different strengths and look a lot different. It's just really important. And if you are in a different disability subgroup, I know different disability subgroups exist, and a lot of times they don't play well together in the sense that we don't look up. Like, I'm not going to be looking up cerebral palsy, blah, 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 because my child has Down syndrome. And so I don't expect someone to be looking up the same things I'm looking up, even though the resources are often the same. That is very interesting to me. But a lot of people that are outside of the Down syndrome community, they don't get a prenatal diagnosis. And so they are introduced at a different time to their child's disability. And so it's a little bit of a different process. And there may not be as many supports, because Down syndrome is so common, even though it's, like 1 in 700, that's pretty common. But other places that you can find your tribe can include like therapy centers. And one of the places I would recommend is finding like an intensive therapy center, because you're going to be able to spend some time with other families, and then also hopefully find your tribe. So that's that. Next, on the topic of therapy centers, there is going to be a push for therapy starting like for us. It was when our baby was still in the NICU. He was getting all these therapies, right? And then he comes home from the NICU. He's still a preemie, and they wanted to be doing like, he qualified for PT, OT, speech. And I'm like, what is like a negative, like he's like -2 weeks old, -3 weeks old. Like what are you doing with him? And so ever since then, we've had therapy for him. And I will say like weekly therapy may not always be the best option. And that intensive therapies, if you can afford it or if your insurance covers it, is a great choice, because that allows you to get a lot of therapy in a very short amount of time, and you'll see more progress that way. And finally, the last thing that I wish I knew 8 years ago is how complicated the medical system would be, and some of the tips that I would really benefit from 8 years ago. Example, having a hospital plan. And this means like, what happens if the child gets sick and you have to go to the hospital? And like having a written plan as far as like, what do you need to bring? So for us, that is a charger. That is some shoes that are comfortable with socks. That is a toothbrush and a blanket or a sweatshirt. And those are the top things that we bring to the hospital. We'll also probably bring like a water bottle, but they typically have snacks and drinks at any hospital and a Ronald McDonald House. You should always ask about the Ronald McDonald House because they have a lot of resources, meals, snacks, activities for siblings. They are a well-oiled machine. I would check out, ask about the Ronald McDonald House in your hospital system if they have one. And then finally, about consolidated care. So in the beginning, our kiddo had multiple doctors and multiple different like places. So we had like through like one hospital system, we had like maybe pulmonologist. And then we had an ENT that was just like outpatient. And then we had a GI that was through something else. And when push came to shove, like we needed some kind of surgery, and each one, like somebody wanted to do ear tubes, somebody else wanted to do a scope, and they couldn't all be in the same hospital system together to do that. And that really frustrated us that they couldn't all do surgery at the same time. Like we wanted one anesthesia event and then all of them like be in the same room. That could not happen through the system. So we ended up consolidating all of our kiddos' care to one hospital system so that it was easier for us from a paperwork perspective, but also for any of the specialists for them to work together. And I did not know that, 8 years ago. I don't expect anyone to know that, but that is just something that we have learned that they may not get, and like we'll get second opinions elsewhere. But from the perspective of like surgery and paperwork, we try to keep all of his care in one place so that all the paperwork is together, all of the resources are together. And if he ever needs a surgery, they can work together because who knew that was a thing? Okay, I hope this was helpful. I can't believe that it's been this long since we got our diagnosis. If you like this video, please like it, please subscribe, and leave a comment below what you found helpful or what you wish you knew, and what else you're looking for here. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day. We'll talk soon. See you in the next video.